All right, today we're doing something a little different. We're going to take one of the most influential documents in all of Western history and put it on trial. But here's the twist. The judge isn't going to be faith or tradition or anything like that. It's going to be pure cold logic. So let's dive in.
Okay, so the one tool we're going to use for this whole thing, it's super simple, but it's incredibly powerful. It's called the law of non-contradiction. All it really says is that something can't be true and not true at the same time in the same way. You can't be both standing up and sitting down right now. Sounds obvious, right? Well, this simple idea is the bedrock of all rational thought, and it's going to be our guide through this whole process.
So what's this document we're putting under the microscope? It's the Nicene Creed. I mean, think about it. For 1,600 years, this one text has basically defined God for billions of people. We're talking Catholics, Orthodox, most Protestants. Its impact on history and how we think is just massive. You really can't overstate it.
And that's why we have to ask the big question. Let's just for a moment set aside faith, set aside the idea of mystery. Let's just look at the words on the page. Does the definition of God in this creed actually make sense? Is it logically consistent? Well, that's what we're here to find out. Now, before we jump into the creed itself, we've got to lay down some ground rules. And this is really important. These are not rules we're making up. Nope. These are the core beliefs, the philosophical foundations of classical theism itself. This is the system the creed was built on, so we're judging it by its own standards.
So here they are, the 5 big axioms. First, God has to be maximally great. The greatest thing you can possibly imagine. Second, something perfect can't become imperfect. Makes sense. Third, the supreme being can't change, ever. Fourth, God is simple, meaning he doesn't have parts, he just is. And fifth, pretty straightforward, the top being can't have another God above it. These are the non-negotiables. This is the rule book for classical theology.
Okay, out of all those, there's one you really need to lock in on: divine simplicity. This one is a total game changer for our whole discussion. It's the idea that God doesn't have things like power or knowledge. He is power. He is knowledge. Think of it like this. You can take the arm off a chair and it's still a chair. But with God, according to this axiom, you can't take away power without destroying the very essence of what God is. They are one and the same.
Okay, so we've got our rules, our logical toolkit is ready. Now it's time to actually look at the Nicene Creed. We're going to zoom in on 3 specific claims it makes, and you're going to see how they start to create this powerful, maybe even fatal, logical problem.
Here are the 3 big claims from the Creed. Number 1, the Son is fully God, made of the exact same stuff as the Father. Number 2, this Son also became a human being, like a real one, with real human limits. He got tired, he didn't know everything. And number 3, and this is a big one, even after he's resurrected and back in glory, he calls the Father, my God. Keep those 3 points in your head.
So right away, we hit our first major snag. How does that work? How can a being who is supposed to be perfect and unchanging suddenly take on imperfection? How does the limitless become limited? It's a real head-scratcher.
And this is where we see the 2 ideas collide head-on. In one corner, you have the axiom, God cannot change, he's immutable. In the other corner, you have the creed's claim, this same God did change. He became a human who could be tempted, who could suffer, who didn't know the future. According to our rulebook of logic, both of those things simply cannot be true at the same time. Now, you might be thinking, well, maybe he just chose not to use his powers. That's a common defense. It's a theological idea called kenosis, or emptying. But remember that divine simplicity axiom we talked about? If God is his power, if he is his knowledge, he can't just set it aside like taking off a coat. To set it aside would be to change his very essence. And the axioms say he can't change. So that defense doesn't quite work, logically.
Okay, if you thought that was a problem, the second contradiction is maybe even clearer. And this one comes directly from the words of the resurrected, glorified Jesus himself.
The logic here is pretty tough to escape. Remember axiom number 5? The supreme being cannot have a God over it. But then we have Jesus, who the creed says is that supreme being, saying things like, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. If you have a God, by definition, you are not the supreme being. It's like saying, I'm the CEO and here's my boss. It's a direct contradiction.
So according to the analysis we're looking at, these aren't just mysteries we have to accept, they're actual breakdowns in logic. And because of that, the source proposes a different way of looking at it, an alternative model that it says fixes these problems. It's called the agency framework.
It works like this. In the agency model, the Father, and the Father alone, is the one supreme God. He's the one that all those axioms apply to perfectly. The Son, then, is his perfect agent, the ultimate representative, in Hebrew the shaliach, the one who acts with the full authority of the one who sent him. So, does this new framework solve the puzzles we found?
Let's find out. This is where we put the two models side by side, a head-to-head showdown. Let's see how the Nicene model and this new agency model handle the exact same logical problems.
And when you look at them together, the difference is pretty stark. Take the incarnation. In the agency model, there's no contradiction. Why? Because the supreme God, the Father, stays perfectly unchanged in heaven while his agent becomes human. And what about Jesus saying, "My God"? Well, that's not a contradiction anymore either. Of course the agent would refer to the one who sent him as "my God." It makes perfect sense. The same goes for the idea of being begotten or derived from the Father. For an agent, that's exactly what you'd expect. So, what's the big takeaway here? The point of this whole exercise isn't to knock anyone's faith. Not at all. It's about looking at what it takes to have a logically coherent system.
You have to remember, the people who wrote the Nicene Creed were brilliant. They were using the best philosophy and logic they had. They were trying to build a rational case, not just say, it's a mystery. All this analysis does is take their goals seriously and apply that same standard of logic to the final product.
And that leads to a pretty powerful conclusion from the source material. It basically says, if a creed can't stand up to scrutiny based on its own philosophical rules, it hasn't somehow transcended reason, it has failed it.
And so that leaves us with a final, really big question to think about. We've just walked through a logical argument suggesting that a tradition 16 centuries old might have some fundamental contradictions baked into it. And that forces us to ask a tough question. When a deeply held tradition and the basic rules of logic seem to collide, which one gets to define what's true?